everyone. Brock Vieira here, College Football Forecast. Welcome to a new episode. I am joined by my co-host, Bill Carroll. Wow, that's so weird for me to be the one saying that. Now I understand why I let you say it. Welcome, Bill. Lot to discuss. How are you feeling?
Uh, it's been a very strange last several days, Brock, but here we are. We did it somehow. Uh, I'm excited about lots of things. Also, I think the most wrong I've ever been in my entire life about a prediction of how a bowl game would turn out recently happened. Shout out to the Golden Bulls of South Florida. I thought it would be a close game, but that Syracuse, superior, blah, 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 Power Five, blah, blah, blah. Stuff I don't normally fall for. When will we learn? South Florida is not only a better team, they were better prepared, better coached, faster, more talented. Now, that's going to change at some point soon because I've said loudly and often that Fran Brown's going to turn that team in about 3 or fewer years to a double-digit win program. But sweet baby Jesus, Alex Golish, wow. That team was ready to go. They were ready to play. Kent McCord must have been looking around thinking, oh boy. He's one of the biggest of the, and we'll talk a little transfer portal because I guess you have to. One of the biggest fish to be landed by any program. A guy that just came off of just narrowly missing, playing in the college football playoffs. 11-1 as a starter, and now he's going to a rebuilding at a program at Syracuse. But Fran Brown's the man for the job. He'll get it done. A guy who's a New Jersey guy, one of the great recruiters of the New Jersey area. A tremendous defensive back himself, back in his playing days at Western Carolina, go Catamounts. And I got to scout him, another feel-old moment for me. But we'll talk a little bit about the FCS championship game, obviously about the bowl season to this point, and then, of course, a little bit about the Senior Bowl. We'll hit the Senior Bowl really hard. Next week, people, we're joined by my friend Matt Hayes of Draft Nerds. Get excited, people, because next week we will spend most of the show on two things, the Senior Bowl and, of course, talking about New Year's Six bowl games. That's what next week's show will be about. And then it'll be 2024. And we will have basically our Senior Bowl preview. And then I guess we're probably done for the year at that point. I mean, for the season, I guess, and then we'll be back again for, I don't know, we'll figure it out. What things are you excited about, Brock?
Well, what I'm upset about this show. I mean, as much as I love our guests and friends of the show, it's always fun to get back to basics and just talking ball with you, Bill. And before we would say we go to a certain point and stop and we'll come back next year, I don't think we can do that anymore because the world of college football is changing in ways that it's hard to take a break anymore. For us sickos in the draft world, we've been doing our 2024, preparation since 2022, if not before. So we're used to this. But I know for everybody else, they're getting ready for a draft season, all that good stuff. But now with the transfer portal, we got to talk about that. Ole Miss landing a tremendous amount of recruits. Talk about this last week of phenomenal bowl games. This week of bowl games yet coming up. So much is going on. I love it, but sometimes it can be a lot to digest, And now with Florida State, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, could they be leaving the ACC? Why would they want to stay at this point? Who knows? But I want to kick it off by just kind of going over last week's kind of bowl schedule. It kicked off everything, of course, the Celebration Bowl. Willie Simmons was finally able to get over the hump as Florida A&M defeated Howard 30-26. Did not love the turnout for the game. I was hoping the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I want to say Georgia Dome, but that's no longer the case. Mercedes-Benz was going to be more packed with fans, but unfortunately, it is what it is. Once again, keep supporting HBCUs and draft HBCU. And, of course, that'll be a theme that we talk about. Some really impressive performances. Fresno State, and as Tedford's going to go back into retirement, put a whooping on New Mexico State. But not a bad season for New Mexico State at all.
Great season. I mean, that's still my coach of the year is Jerry Kill. And technically speaking, Coach Tedford is taking a medical leave for a year. Now, I don't know what happens after that season is over, that he's taking this medical leave of absence, but if they have an amazing season, it'd be hard to see moving back to. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, continue.
Well, I would like to add Tedford had a really good tenure at Fresno State the first time. Took medical leave. Kalen DeBoer came in, had two phenomenal years. Went up to Washington. Now is about to compete for national championship. Tedford came back, won the Mountain West last year. Had a pretty decent year this year considering all the losses they had. Take another retirement. Fresno State will bring in another great coach. He'll go out to a Power Five, make them a national title contender. He'll come back. It'll be rinse repeat all over again. But yeah, great.
So about like what Bob Stoops occasionally does at Oklahoma. Oh, you guys are stuck for an interim coach. You guys are.
Come back. It's like Barry Alvarez. Oh, you guys did a one off. Come back. No problem. Hey, if it works, it works, right? But Tedford's former program, Cal, which he left not in the greatest of ways, and that wasn't his fault. It was more on the Golden Bears. They lost to Texas Tech, 34-14. The Independence Bowl, fourth straight losing season for Justin Wilcox, but they're not going to get rid of him because they can't afford it. And you know how I feel about that. Shout out Jacksonville State for winning their first ever bowl game. But the last one I want to cover, LA Bowl, UCLA 35, Boise State 22. Boise State was gashing them up the middle of the run game in the first half. Holy moly. George Holani, I wasn't sure if it was Holani or if it was like Earl Campbell. I just wasn't sure what I was watching out there. But UCLA tightened up in the second half, of course, with an interim defensive coordinator. And then also, bringing in Garbers, even though he was hurt, which we're still kind of confused about that whole thing. Garbers came in, changed the game over. You saw the transfers that you expect to make place throughout the season finally show up in the final game of the year. J. Michael Sturdivant, California, had some pretty big catches, and Chip Kelly hits the 8-win mark again. I think the third straight year UCLA has had 8 or more wins. So
it looks like they're maybe an 8-win program. Looks like maybe that's what they are.
Maybe that's what they are. We'll see what happens when they go into the Big Ten next year. But that kind of rounds off the bowl recap. Some great bowl games this week. I just want to kick those off by talking about my native Hawaii, the Hawaii Bowl, Coastal Carolina, San Jose State. There's Grayson McCall headed to NC State is just chef's kiss. I want to add that because I believe Robert and I will still be the OC there, right? Entering next year.
I believe that is the case, and watch for this kid to have a monster season. Early Senior Bowl roster alert for next year for Jim.
Yep.
There's a guy who might have a shot at MVP of the Senior Bowl in about 370 some odd days.
Yeah, exactly. And since we've known each other, we've been talking about McCall for a long time. And then obviously this is the first year without Jamie Chadwell. Things didn't exactly go to plan. End of the year hurt. I think he's going to go to a place that it really fits his play style and a coordinator that fits his play style.
Ding.
Yeah, that is the thing that we love the most. At NC State, a team to watch out for in 2024. But for this game, San Jose State hosts native Hawaii kid, St. Louis graduate Chevy Cordero on the year. 2,558 passing yards, 19 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions, 213 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. I'm excited to see him as it will be his final ever collegiate game at the place for which was his old University of Hawaii. But Kyrie Robinson, the running back, he's
Talented.
the kid. Yeah. Kyrie Robinson, he's the kid that I love a lot. 1,127 rushing yards, 18 rushing touchdowns of the year. I expect him to have a big game. I expect San Jose State to run away with this one. Before I kick it back to you, last bowl game I want to highlight, Georgia State versus Utah State, Idaho. Famous Idaho Potato Bowl. All right, I love Georgia State. 6-6, but they got off to a hot start early in the year, and then they just kind of fade off. Don't exactly know what kind of happened with them, but they have 2 players that I love to watch. I don't really see them making it big at the next level. I just enjoy what they've done on the collegiate surface. Their quarterback, Darren Granger, 2,364 passing yards.
Yes.
Dual threat, 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 625 rushing yards. Second leading rusher on the team with 8, and he also has 8 rushing touchdowns. And second to the other guy, Marcus Carroll, 1,350 rushing yards, 13 rushing touchdowns. Love this
Cousin
kid.
Marquez, yes,
Yes,
maybe.
exactly.
I'll have to do some digging, but I think Granger is a guy who has a chance to be what people thought Malik Willis might be. He could he tighten up his passing mechanics? Yes. Could he do a better job of not leading defenders to the football? Most certainly. But the arm strength is there. The deep ball passing touch is there. He gets in trouble over, like a lot of young quarterbacks, over the middle of the field. He doesn't always see deep dropping linebackers. You know, you'll hear me say that a lot about young quarterbacks because it happens. But does he have the components to be a really good quarterback? He has the stuff you look for. I don't know enough about, what his off-season situation is to know, if he's working with people that sort of help him develop. But he's on my all underappreciated team, and he was on my all emerging team. Before a couple of years ago, he's been on my underappreciated team. He was an honorable mention last year. He's going to be a second teamer this year. I just he's 23 years old, so I don't know. There's a lot of development still to be done. I sort of worry about that, but when I look at what he's made of, the size, the live arm, the speed, I think he might be one of the 3 or 4 fastest quarterbacks in all of college football. I think he's going to run in that between somewhere between Mariota and Ritter range, somewhere between maybe the mid 4.5s and high 4.4s. And I just think that if he goes, situations everything with quarterbacks, obviously. If he goes to a place where they're going to, first of all, take time, right? Take your time. He's not going to be ready to go right away. But this guy's all over my. In fact, I'm about 9 days late on my 12 days of sleepers. I'll start tweeting that out. I'll start cranking out those articles because I'm way behind. But he's going to be one of the players I talk about in my 12 days of sleepers. He is one of those guys that, size, speed, arm, like there's stuff there that you look at. Back in 2021, which isn't that long ago, I guess, but I was thinking to myself, could this be a guy that transfers, right? Because I just thought, South Carolina, of course, at that point didn't have Rattler yet. And in some ways, he's even better fit for their offense than Rattler, but that's a discussion for another time. But this kid's got it, man, in terms of talent. It's just refinement, which is the hardest thing to do, right? That turning a lump of coal into a diamond at the quarterback position is the single hardest thing to do in football. Everything else is, lots of things are challenging. But this is a guy that ran for 142 yards on UConn. Now, admittedly, UConn is not exactly a juggernaut powerhouse. I get that. He put up 466 passing yards against a not too shabby Charlotte team. Charlotte's not a killer, but they're not bad, including a 97-yard pass and run, which is, I think, the third, obviously it's one of the deep, in terms of passing plays in all levels of football, it's in the top 4. You can't do many more yards than that. But the thing for him, 2,364 passing yards, and he's a guy that obviously really, really can run the ball. 625 rushing yards after you subtract out sacks, because that's what you do at the collegiate level. But twice was over 100 yards rushing. And James Madison is a good defense. He went for 103 on them. So even if you want to sort of poo-poo the UConn 142, which I understand, the 103 against James Madison. Now, James Madison made him look bad at times. That was not his best game. They made him look bad, especially in the passing game. That's a good defense. If people don't watch James Madison football, first of all, why not? But that's one of the better defenses in the group of 5, whatever. Already, they move up from the FCS and boom, they're one of the top 30 or so defenses I saw outside of the Power 5. Maybe top 20, 25 defenses outside the Power 5. But yeah, that's a kid I really like. I do. I like him a lot. And I hope he gets to maybe the Shrine Game or NFLPA. Unless he takes an extra year, which I don't know. Unless he's going to do it someplace else, I don't see why it would help him, because he's developed as much as that team can develop him. But he's 23 years old, so he's probably going to be in the draft. I have to, unlike other years where you see a guy who's 23 years old, he's in the draft. I have to double check this year because of the last of the COVID-19 eligibility extensions. Anybody else that you really like as a prospect before we dig into the FCS championship game?
No, not really. I do want to say that I think the Las Vegas Bowl, Utah versus Northwestern, there's gonna be
Oh,
some prospects in there that people should pay attention to. Of course, if you follow my work here at Team MBS Media, also with Rams Wire, I do prospect listings all the time, so you get an opportunity to see the guys I select after I get a chance to view the game. But no, I'm ready to move on to the FCS playoffs. I mean, wow, what a game! What two games we had. I There's one we both know that was just breathtaking. But what was your takeaway from the playoffs this weekend? Last weekend.
so as you know, I was super, super, super excited. The While there were some teams that didn't show up, didn't do what I thought they would do, for the most part, the teams I thought would show up and be good in the playoffs were. And you saw good on good, like good, really good programs. Now, the class of the FCS is probably still South Dakota State. They have pro prospects, legitimate pro prospects, all throughout their lineup on both sides of the ball. Their offensive line has two or three guys that have a good shot to play at the next level. They have one of the top 8 or so running back prospects. I didn't say at FCS, in college football. There are not 10 better running backs in college football than Isaiah Davis. I didn't stutter. He's in that 8 to 10 range, no matter who you're talking about, whatever level. If you haven't been watching Isaiah Davis, if you care about watching running backs, if you care about the running back position at all, watch it. Speed, leg drive, hands, so we don't throw the ball to him as much as I would, but he can catch the ball. He can run between the tackles. He can turn the corner and burn you with speed. He's probably going to run in the 4.47 range, somewhere around there, probably, and legit 226 pounds. He may slim down a little bit, to run at the combine. But this kid's got whatever you want for the most part. He's solid in blitz pickup. They asked him to do a lot in that offense. He does it at a high level. Their quarterback is sort of a fringe prospect in Gronowski, but they've got tight ends. I mean, you're already seeing what Tucker Kraft can do. They know the tight end position. They've got guys on that, on that team that are, like I said, that offensive and defensive line has pro prospects, multiple pro prospects. And while Montana is a really good football program, and I give them a chance to win, I want to make it clear that they have a chance to win. It will be maybe not a massive upset, but a significant upset if they come out of that game. But the Jackrabbits, oof, I mean, I'm thinking about they would hammer, not just beat, but hammer a bunch of, and not just FBS programs, but I can go to a couple of Power Fives. They would beat 2 or 3 SEC schools or the bottom SEC schools by multiple scores, Brock. They would put it all over on a bunch of the bottom feeders in the Big Ten. Indiana would not want to see that program coming. They would give Northwestern a good fight, who are in a bowl game, right? That would be a good game to see. To me, that would be almost even odds. I think that they are as good a program, top to bottom, as Northwestern's football program. If you just look at what they are on offense and defense, they're right there with them. I really, really like a lot of the talent they've stacked up on that program. They're just good. Like I don't know how else to put it. If you haven't been watching, like I said, I urge you, if you care about, being, I don't know, prepared, if you're one of those people that prepares for the draft, you aren't prepared if you haven't been watching South Dakota State. Right. You haven't done your work. You've got a gap. You've got a hole in your work if you haven't prepared by watching these guys. And
Yeah,
particularly along their lines. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say when you talk about a program that is fundamentally sound, South Dakota State is it. John
Yep.
Stiegelmeyer was there for
Yep.
26 years as the
Yep.
head coach. He went out, the champion. What happens in 2023? Jimmy Rogers gets promoted. He goes 14-0 right now. And
Yep.
if you look at their schedule, they have what two close games, which was at Southern Illinois, who was ranked number 12 at the time, and then
Right. And
against
shout
number
out to
3 Montana State.
Salukis, right? Shout out to the Salukis, because that shows you what a good program they are, that they managed to really hang around and look like they were going to gave them a really good game. And that tells you a lot about that. That's a program to watch in the future as well. They're good and going to be good, continue to be good.
Absolutely. But then you look at the schedule, in 3 of the last 5 games, they've held their opponents scoreless.
Yep.
And in those games, all their opponents were ranked.
Yep.
Just to put that into example. And then because I'm a big stats guy, not in like the math sense, like don't make me try and do stats, but like I like to read stats. Isaiah Davis, 15 carries,
Yep.
107 yards, 2 touchdowns against Albany in the semifinals. And then the Janke brothers, Jackson, 2 receptions, 22 yards. Unfortunately, was showed up by Jaden, 6 receptions, 151 yards, and a
Yep.
touchdown. You know, excuse me.
Yep. And
This team can beat you in so many ways. And
real quick, shout out to Albany for holding him to 107. Now, Albany has 2 legitimate NFL prospects on their defensive line, and they lost Jared Verse, right, 2 years ago. So when you think about that, when you think about the fact that this is a team that had Jared Verse not that long ago, it's crazy to think of how good their defense could be if they had all those guys. But even without Jared Verse, Albany has 2 legitimate. The Great Danes have 2 legitimate, and I've written about Anton Junkaj, and I'm writing more about him for my year-end nutties. And also, please, if you get in your, if you are interested, get in your nominees for the year-end nutties. Because in the next 7 or so days, I'm going to finalize my list, and it should drop on the last day of the year, on the 31st, of our year-end Nutties Awards for the best football players at each position, at each level: Division III, NAIA, FCS, Division II, and of course FBS football.
Yes. And for everyone following Isaiah Davis, in the 3 playoff games that South Dakota State has had, he has had at least 100 yards in every single one of them. I believe 117 against Mercer and 192 against Villanova. And of course, we just spoke about his big performance against Albany. But we kind of knew how that game was going to go. That's what we didn't really talk about last week when we had Zach on. The game that we were interested in, North Dakota State, Montana.
Woo!
Missoula was rocking. One of the most beautiful environments for a football game. I gotta check that place out before I meet my maker. I mean, good Lord, when you talk about beauty, that is a place.
Yep.
But you know what's not beautiful? What North Dakota State called for the 2-point conversion attempt in overtime to attempt to tie the game. I know we're gonna talk about that, but just talk about the whole game. What was your thoughts?
So these two teams, you hear people say evenly matched. These teams are, you hear terms like mirror images, blah, blah, blah. Those were 2 teams that had so much in common in the way they want to play football, in the things that they like to do, and how they establish what they do and how they do it. And so it really did look almost like a very spirited and incredibly violent inter-squad scrimmage, in the way that they both wanted to establish, being able to get 4 more yards on first down, right? Both teams said, we got to get 4 more yards on first down. Both teams knew they needed to stay on schedule. Both teams wanted to win the hidden yards battle, by being better on special teams, stopping the other team from getting many return yards on either punts and kickoffs, and then winning that battle by getting more yards on punts and kickoffs. Not turning the ball over, so all the things that you look at in how 2 teams examine themselves or examine what they want to do, they each looked at and said, this is what we want to do. And it was almost the same checklist on both sides, right? We want to be the more physical team between the tackles, right? We want to be able to lean on the other team and run downhill. We want to hit 1 or 2 deep shots off play action, in each half of the game. And I mean, that very easily could have been a game that went into additional, overtimes or whatever, right? I mean, they that game could be still going on practically because of how evenly matched those two teams were. I mean, 31-29, back and forth, back and forth. The Grizzlies looked a little out of sorts early on. NDSU looked like the better team in the first quarter. Then Grizzlies come back and score 10 points in the second quarter, and it's 10-6. And then there's a field goal in the third quarter. It's kind of quiet-ish for a little bit. And then, the fourth quarter is won 7-6 by NDSU. Then it goes into OT number one, 7-7. And then the Grizzlies win overtime number two, 8-6, right? It's that simple. They won OT number two. The game is essentially completely gridlocked until that second overtime, and that's the difference. The difference is that second overtime, and NDSU is still a very good program, but it's clear that their death grip on FCS football is I won't say permanently broken, but at least broken for the time being. They lose their head coach to taking over the linebacker coaching position at USC. And that's a great gift for USC. Well done. And you saw Keelan White, a guy that I don't think enough people were talking about, just look amazing. Corbin Walker intercepts that 2-point pass attempt at the end, to get through. Bobby Houck, right, who back where he belongs, I guess you could say, called a pretty good game as a head coach. And you had all the same things you would look for, right? Bergen played. I mean, speaking of players that don't get enough credit, man, I love this kid, man. Junior Bergen is a beast, right? Beast. He made clutch play after clutch play after clutch play. And all those classic football cliches about big time players making big time plays in big time games. By that extremely overdone, overused cliche, there should be a picture of Junior Bergen throughout this season. He's been the guy that has come up when they needed him to, time after time after time after time after time. And I want that guy on my football team. I want him. He really fits the profile of certain teams. Obviously, Green Bay loves guys like him. He's got some Greg Jennings to him. I would love to have him in black and gold. But he's going to help you in your return game, and he's going to become, right out of the box, a guy's content for wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, and will get better over time. That's a really good football player on a really good team. And like I said, without him, they don't win that game. In fact, without him, they don't get to that game. Forget winning that game. They are in that game without what Junior Bergen's done for them. He's just one of the most explosive players I've ever seen, and one of the most explosive players in this draft class. If he is in this draft class, I have to double check. Once again, he could be. I don't know if he will be. Junior Bergen conceivably could continue to stay in school. I don't know if he will. I don't know. We'll see. He is a junior, and we don't see a lot of FCS early declarees. There's usually a sprinkling of them. But I would take him if he declared. I would take Junior Bergen somewhere in those middle rounds. I would take him and not think anything of it. He is so good. And, like I said, one of the best punt returners, regardless of level of football, and one of the best kick returners, regardless of level of football, you will see anywhere in college football. I love that game. And I would watch that game again. I may watch that game again, quite frankly, Brock. What were your impressions?
Yeah, no, I basically kind of hit everything on the head. I had some major questions about what Entz was going to do in terms of game management and when he would take his shots, considering he's basically playing with house money. I think, of course, he wants to win another national championship. No question. But as you mentioned, he's hitting off the USC anyway, so there really wasn't any type of backlash if he was to lose this game. So I think that's what kind of contributed to some of the play calls that we saw. The second biggest thing that I mentioned in our last show was going to be the play of Clifton McDowell. I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to sustain an offense enough to keep up with the North Dakota State, but he did a pretty good job. He didn't commit any interceptions. He went 16 to 30, 160 yards, a touchdown, and they also had 17 yards on the ground. He managed the game. Is the
manage the game.
best
Yeah.
way to put it. And he did exactly what he needed to do. He didn't put the ball in danger, and that was the difference in the game against in the semifinals against North Dakota State. Cam Miller, 9 for 22, 107 yards, one touchdown. You gotta question if they did some different things in the past game. We could be looking at it. We could be looking at it. I mean, I get it that you had 40 rushing attempts for 175 yards. You were putting in work on the ground. But to me, if you're going to have that type of production on the ground, you want to supplement it with consistent passing game that
Yep.
you use the ball for. Passing game is essentially going to be what's the word, an extension of your rush game and more of a long handoff. That's the way to put
Yep.
it. I didn't feel like it meshed well. I feel there was another big difference in the game. So we'll see what happens in the national championship. Wish I come back to it. That's going to take place January 7th, I believe.
Yep.
But
Yep.
Montana, good for them. I just have not seen enough from them this season to say that I am confident that they have a remote chance of defeating South Dakota State. I think South Dakota State has too much firepower. I think the coaching is too elite, and I see them winning the championship comfortably. But again, championship game, never know what happens. But those two teams will be playing the championship game. You know who won't be playing it for a national championship? Florida State.
Yes, exactly. They will not.
Oh, it's to our topic. What can you say? Obviously, I've have expressed that I feel that FSU got screwed. Um, a- the state of Florida was threatening to sue. I don't know how that even going to work.
Yep.
Want to file an injunction to make Georgia and Florida State also a playoff game, which doesn't make sense. Now there's Florida State suing the ACC over grant of right to withdraw fee in case they want to leave and go to another conference.
Yeah.
Just thinking this, what do you
The winner in this will be billable hours. That's who the winner will be. There, I don't think you can get out of the contract or that they're. I mean, well, I should say they can't get out of it. They will have to buy their way out of it if they want to get out of it, and it will not be inexpensive to do so. They are looking at a well into the eight figures, probably, or at least, probably somewhere in the eight figures to get out of the contract they're currently in. And is that worth it to them? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, that's the great question: is how badly does this particular bear want to gnaw off its foot to get out of that trap? Right. That's the question. Do you want to? Do you want to chew through your own foot to get out of this particular trap that currently you're in? If you want to get out of it badly enough, then yeah, you'll gnaw through your own bones, tendons, and muscles. But that's what it's going to be like. It's going to be like biting through your own flesh to try to get out of what you're currently in. I think the better solution is to have a more thoroughly connected and plugged in leadership at the conference level. I think that when you look at we sometimes complain about the guys, and women who are constantly sort of backdoor politicking, for their conference. But now you see why, right? This is why you do all that backdoor politicking, why you invite people on golf junkets or whatever it is and bend their ears. Is it a filthy, filthy game? Yes. But you need to be playing that filthy, filthy game. Otherwise, you may end up in a New Year. I mean, ending up in a New Year's Six bowl game shouldn't sound like a punishment, but I fully understand why Florida State is super pissed. All they did was win their conference in a Power 5 conference and go undefeated. That should have been enough. It always has been before, but once again, 3 letters, SEC. If that by law they have to have an SEC team out there, so somebody was getting screwed. And when the music stopped, there was no seat left for Florida State. I think that's a bit of a, I mean, I get people saying, "Oh, but are they really one of the best 14?" Blah blah blah. Well, one, how do we know? I mean, like it's easy to say what you think they'll be, but they'll be playing with, though not Jordan Davis. They'll be playing. They'll be playing with. I mean, Jordan Travis. They'll be playing with Rodemacher, who didn't play in the last game that we saw them. He is a better prospect, a better player, than their third string quarterback, which is usually the case with your second string quarterback. We don't know what that team looks like. We don't know. But to assume that they will be an inferior team, while is logical, is not something you can state. Like, you don't know that. It makes sense, but as people keep bringing up, Ohio State went through three different quarterbacks, right, in their run that year, and managed to hoist that crystal football. So yeah, they should have at least been given a chance to lose it on the field. That's all you ask for as a player. Give me a chance to lose it on the field.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more that can really be added to it. The committee set a precedent that they would allow teams to enter with third string quarterbacks or backup quarterbacks when they allowed Ohio State to be the number 4 seed over TCU and Baylor in the first ever college football playoff.
Yep.
So I could go on and on about why Florida State should be in and not, but it comes out to one thing: the committee does not respect Mike Norvell. That's the only reason. You tell me right now, if Jimbo Fisher was still the head coach of Florida State and they're in this predicament, are they in? Yes. If Bobby Bowden, God rest his soul, was still alive and still coaching Florida State, would they be in the playoff? There wouldn't even be a question. So it comes down to the fact that the committee does not respect Mike Norvell. What I have to ask is, why did Michigan, Washington, and Texas get in over Florida State? For Texas, is it because they beat Bama, who was the SEC champ? Okay, that's fair. Not really, but whatever. Let's look at Michigan and Washington. Let's look at resumes. Michigan, who did they really beat this year besides Ohio State? Honestly,
that's kind of the list. Yeah, you.
That's it. I'm gonna take a quick just a peek. They've had three ranked wins this year.
Yep.
At Penn State, who is notorious for not actually being a good team. Sorry, Courtney. We love that you love your school, but your school is not good at football.
To be fair, that's a fringe top 10 team, but they have a tendency in the biggest moments to wilt. That would be fair to say, yes.
That doesn't sound like a top 10 team. That sounds like a.
I said fringe top 10. Yeah,
that's a bottom 20 team. That sounds like the resume of.
Wait, hold on. Ole Miss and Penn State should play each other each year to decide which team is like a top 10 team, which team isn't.
I cannot tell you how stoked I am for this bowl game because of it. It's like they're the same things, except one's in the north, one's in the south. It's fantastic. So they beat Ohio State, not really convincingly. It was a back and forth game, and you're at home. And then you beat Iowa, who can't muster an offense to save their life. So where's their impressive win? Because Florida State beat.
I don't know if Iowa could score 10 points on Albany, and Albany is a good FCS program, an FCS program. I don't think it can score 10 points on a top FCS program. That offense is. I watch everybody. I make myself watch every game that I can, but my God, watching Iowa's offense is a struggle.
A struggle. Like, you can't even run the ball well, and that's the only thing you do. Like you do realize there's pulling guards, there's traps, zone blocking scheme. Thank goodness Brad Ferentz is gone, because that team needs it. I keep in mind, Iowa, even though it's controversial, they did lose to Minnesota at home. So, just saying. Yep. But let's look at the resume of Florida State compared to Michigan's. They beat number 5 LSU. Yep. They beat number 16 Duke. Then they beat number 14 Louisville. So, Michigan had 3 ranked wins. Florida State had 3 ranked wins. One of Michigan State's ranked ones came in the championship game. Florida State's one of the ranked ones came in the championship game.
Yep.
But there's one thing on here that to me puts Florida State's record above Michigan's. They went into Death Valley and they won. It wasn't a clean game. It wasn't a great game. It was a great game. It wasn't like a great execution
Right.
by Florida State. But at the end of the day, they won.
Yep.
Where is that tough, gritty road win that Michigan has on their resume? I don't see it. I think it's a shame that just because Michigan had a higher preseason ranking, they're in over Florida State.
Yeah.
Continuing on with sorry, continue.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, I don't have a huge problem with Michigan being in. I I think that Michigan is going to have a tougher time than people think. uh, I know people look at Washington and they somehow find all the warts, right? They find all the warts. Oh, they played so and so close. Oh, they gave up X number of points to so and so. But for mental toughness, is there a mentally tougher program in college football, period? Full stop. I don't know. I don't know if there's a mentally tougher team anywhere in college football.
Possibly Alabama, but that might be it.
Possibly.
I think they're tied, honestly. No, I mean Washington. I think Washington should be in, but we also can't ignore the fact they beat Oregon the first time by 3. Then they had a duck against Arizona where they only won by 8. Stanford team they only won by 9.
Yeah.
Utah they only won by 7. Oregon State they only won by 2. Washington State they only won by 3, and they aren't even bowl eligible. And
Right.
then, of course, remember the great Pac-12 championship game, which was a lot more dominating than the scoreline precedes. But I'm just saying
that was their best win all season.
Yeah.
That was their best
That
by
was
far
their
best win all season. Yeah. Yep.
I'm just saying, if you look at Florida State's record, they had a close one against Boston College, but that one was a tough game because that was red bandana game. But hey, you
Right.
gotta get the job done. And then you had a close one against Clemson, and then I'm looking down the list: blowout, 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 comfortable win. Miami was kind of close, blowout, pretty comfortable, and not that great, but kind of comfortable. I think it's a shame that Florida State is not in the playoffs. We can go over this over and over again, but what is the solution? I have a solution that people are gonna think that I'm crazy for. But what is your solution, Bill, for Florida?
Well, I mean, my solution would just have it be a rule that if you're undefeated and you won your conference, you're in. I mean, just make it a flat out statement. If you are an undefeated conference champion, you're in. Now that we're moving to 12, obviously this will alleviate some of these issues. And any team with a loss is automatically stacked after behind undefeated teams. You don't have to like it, but I mean that's a simple solution. Like you can be mad, but that's a simple solution. Are you undefeated and you won your conference? You're in. Now, if you're undefeated but you didn't win your conference, which how could that? Well, I guess there could be 2 undefeated teams. That's how. If you're undefeated and you didn't win your conference, then you're sort of on tenterhooks. And if you won your conference but you have a loss, you're on tenterhooks. Like that. Now it's only if we have empty slots available. But an undefeated conference champion should just be in. That way it's just simplified. You don't have to think about it. You just set it and forget it. Now, I know that they're loath to do that because that takes some of the drama or whatever out of it, I guess. But if you just had a rule that you're an undefeated conference champion, boom, you're in. There it is. That's an easy one. That's my solution.
That's a pretty good solution. But to me, what we just saw pointed out something that I think is kind of evident, especially with this expanded playoff. The conference championship means nothing anymore, and it's not going to. And my solution is that Florida State should become an independent. I know you made that laugh, but let me.
Are you contributing to their GoFundMe so they can buy themselves out of the ACC?
I understand. I think one of those network deals might be willing to invest a little bit of money. I'm just saying. Before Notre Dame and NBC were tied, and then NBC now starts buying into Big Ten championship games. I think that if NBC's doing that, Fox, CBS, other networks, I think they're going to start being interested in expanding their coverage too. And what would be a better program than the Florida State Seminoles? I'm just saying. And then also, I would like to add that Notre Dame has made the college football playoff on multiple occasions, and none of them have been. Actually, wait, that might have been. Okay, yeah, that one was only one time where they're undefeated and they made the college football playoff. The other times they had a loss to their record. I think if you're Florida State, you take a look at that Notre Dame model, right? Notre Dame has 9 easy games a year and 3 challenging ones. Okay. Florida State would be able to schedule Notre Dame annually, and that is a rivalry that has been brewing for darn near 30, 40 years at this point.
Yep.
And I honestly think needs to be played annually, because it just does, right? And then you already have the Florida matchup. You'll be able to rope in Miami because again the in-state matchups. So boom,
Right.
there's your 3 games. You can schedule another tough one with like an LSU or something, like alternate it here and there, and then you plug in 7 easy games on North Texas, South Alabama, Army, Navy, UConn. Who cares, right?
Minnesota. Yeah, I got you.
Minnesota.
Um,
And I'm just saying, Florida State is already one of the biggest national brands there is already. They're in the state of Florida, which is a huge market, and they are in the heart of the South. I know financially may not make sense right now, but it also doesn't have to be done today. It Every year that you remain in the ACC, that buyout number goes way down, and those TV deals go way up. I think soon there will be a magic number available for Florida State to get out and build themselves a marquee schedule that's mostly easy and that gets them to the playoff.
yeah. No, I mean, I don't dislike what you're saying, and maybe I'm half joking, but maybe Notre Dame and Florida State become a 2-team conference. If it worked for, Stanford and for Washington State, I guess it can not Stanford, Washington State for Cal and Washington State,
Oregon State,
Oregon State. There it is. Thank you.
Yes,
If it worked
Cal
for Cal,
is a member of the athletic.
they're in the ACC
conference.
Yeah, they're in the ACC. Right, of course they're in the ACC.
Yeah,
right. If it worked for
that's why when I think of California, I think of Atlantic Coast.
Exactly. If it worked for Washington State and Oregon State, then I guess it could work for Florida State and Notre Dame. They could join. They could be a 2-team conference and then have a sneaky link relationship with the ACC, similar to the one that the Mountain West now has in football with those two, the Pac-2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm half joking, but it could probably work.
The more you think about it, the more I say, oh wait, hold on. Brock's crazy mind might have thought of something very smart.
Right. I mean, if they did become a 2-team conference, they split, the money between the two of them. And then they form like a sneaky link, like I said, relationship with, I don't know, probably the ACC, whoever it is that, answers that who up text. They could potentially build a good enough schedule that whoever wins that 2-team conference would definitely be in the college football playoff, especially with expanding to 12. They both would make it, actually. When it expands to 12, they could both pretty much be guaranteed a spot. The fact is that realignment, the realignment frenzy of the last few years has given and it's taken away, right? If you're SMU, you're now part of the ACC, which also feels a little weird, but is a great move for SMU, which now becomes the Texas outpost for the ACC. So now the ACC has those Texas markets, including the Metroplex market, the TV market, the recruiting market, all those terrific programs that we just saw when we watched DeSoto play, right, in the Texas high school championships. All those kids, all those kids are now exposed to the ACC.
That dude's 24. I don't care what anybody says.
But you have all of that Texas money from SMU. You have, because SMU has money. They have deep pockets. They have great facilities. They have smart leadership. they're going to be a 9-win team, I think, right out of the box in conference. And, threatening to play in, I don't know, Peach Bowl. I'd like to go back and see what the bowl tie-ins for like the third, fourth team in the ACC. They're going to be right there right away. And I think it's only a matter of time before they angle to eventually move into the SEC. But this is a good place to spend the next few years while you raise your national profile before you try to, move into the SEC. If truly, I've half joked about the sort of relegation thing like soccer, where like SMU eventually plays its way into the SEC, Vanderbilt plays its way into the ACC, or out of the SEC, or however you want to put it. There's a lot of wacky stuff going on in college football. I'm half joking about the relegation thing, but only half. There are clearly some teams who play in the SEC. If the SEC truly was an elite conference, those teams wouldn't be part of the SEC, right? I mean, that if they truly were an elite conference, they would not. The SEC, especially this year, was not that tough. Especially, I mean, Mississippi State, Ole Miss was good. South Carolina was all right. Obviously, Georgia's a really good team. Alabama's really good. Ole Miss good. Florida was all right. That's a solid program, but not mind-boggling. Tennessee was, above average, but were they better than, say, North Carolina? No. Probably about North Carolina level program. I'd love to see the two of them play. Winner ends up the SEC, loser ends up the ACC.
I take Tennessee in that one. I think they got better coaching, but you bring up some great points, and unfortunately, none of them are going to reach the ears of people making these decisions. And I guess that's the worst part for me is that we the fans have the best interest of the sport at heart, and those in power have their pocketbooks at heart. So I guess it's just one of those things where it is what it is.
It is
But
what it is. Yes.
that does lead us into something that will help us determine which players will help line their own pockets enter the NFL draft. Senior Bowl,
Senior
the
Bowl.
2024 Senior Bowl, kind of accept the list came out is the best way to put it. Um, and we're gonna talk about that briefly. Of course, next we're gonna do our deep dive. I only have one thing to say. Well, two things. One, looking forward to this great game. Love the guys I see. Two position groups that stand out to me as being incredibly strong right now are the wide receivers and defensive line. Linebackers as well intrigue me. A little bit concerned about the DBs. Very concerned about the quarterbacks and running backs. That's my kind of takeaway. What's yours as we kind of finish up over here?
Sure. So when I look at the guys who were definitely in now, Jaheim Bell never quite had the whatever that anyone was hoping he would have. People were calling him a supersized Deebo Samuel. He's a 229 pounder. He's 6'1", 7/8". He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. He's less like Deebo than he is like a smaller but faster version of Cam Hayward's little brother.
Connor.
Yeah, he's more like a smaller, faster Connor Hayward than he is like Deebo, despite the. But here's one of the players I'm most excited about. Dylan Laub, right, from
New Hampshire.
He's absolutely terrific. I love him. Ben Sinnott from Kansas State, I think is a good prospect. He's sort of that tweener between fullback and tight end. I want to see if he's legit 6'4". If he's a legit 6'4", that helps him. I love the guard Cooper Beebe, also from Kansas State. Yep. My guy Michael Pratt is there, right? 6'2.5", 219, live arm, tough guy. I like him. Yeah, I like him. I like linebacker Cedric Bay from Carolina. That's a guy I really, really like. Devondre Sweat is maybe the guy that's first off the board, maybe amongst the guys who are there. It's only has a chance to be the first guy drafted amongst the guys that are there. He could go in the top 10.
Well, Latu is actually there as well. I saw his name.
Right, and that it'll be a battle. To me, that's a battle between those two to see which one comes off the board. And the safeties, are a bit of a mixed bag to me. There's guys at the FCS level who I think, frankly, are better than some of the FBS safeties that were invited there. But that's, I'm not. Um,
I
I'm
concur. I concur. I concur.
I don't dislike Quincy Riley, but there's guys I like better. Dwayne Carter is a guy that has a chance to sort of bust out. He's another of those three technique types. Chris Abrams Drain is an interesting player. He was a guy that came there as a receiver, got switched, sort of late in his career to corner. Sort of like a poor man's Trayvon Diggs. Spencer Rattler's there. Spencer Rattler's a guy that people have talked themselves into. There's guys I would have invited over him, quite frankly, but he'll get a chance to prove himself. Johnny Wilson, he'll need to show me he can separate from people, but I guess you can separate from people vertically because you're that tall when you're 6'6" and an 8. Sataoa Lamea
Close enough.
is yes is
From
a guy
Utah.
that right from Utah is a guy that will get to show people if he's a right tackle or is he a guard.
Yep. Yeah, because I have him listed as a guard right now.
I think that's probably his best position. Brandon Coleman is another guy that was a Steve Avila teammate. Has played left tackle and left guard. I think he's a guard also. Eichenberg is one of those guys. We talked about him a lot when we had our friend Josh, number one friend of the show. Eichenberg is solid. I think he becomes like a AJ Klein type of NFL prospect.
Mm-hmm.
He's solid, dependable. You mentioned Latu. That's a guy that has a chance to go in the top 20 picks.
I think he's gonna be a top 10 actually.
We'll see how if he tests really well, he could. It comes down to he and Sweat are the guys will be sort of guys that might go early.
But they also play defense, and I think offense is going to dominate the first 15 picks too. So we'll see.
Marshawn Nealand is there. He's the guy that got my guy Anton Junkaj's spot. I don't dislike Nealand, but I've watched a lot of like Yukaj and other guys at the FCS level who I think are as good or better. Max Melton is maybe the best pure athlete of all the defensive backs there. I think he deserves to be there, unlike some of the other corners who are there. Duke Hororu from Clemson is there. He's another one of those sort of undersized three techniques, and was originally going to be in last year's Senior Bowl. Came back for an extra year. I like other guys better than him too. I think maybe it's sort of a Clemson effect thing that got him there. McKinley Jackson is another guy that had a big name coming out of high school, never quite put it together, in my opinion. I wonder if, this is big for him, but I wonder if he'll, I wonder if he's really truly deserving, other than because that being sort of a big name from a big school. Troy Fontenot from Washington. Fautanu from Washington is another guy that, is another guy on that tackle guard. A lot of guys who are on that tackle guard bubble.
Yep.
Marshawn Lloyd's decent. There's guys I like better. I like Ja'Shawn Johnson from Louisville better.
Yep.
There's other running backs I like better, but I do like that kid. Devontae Walker, I'm happy to see him there. That's a terrific story and a really good player.
Yes.
Adisa Isaac. Obviously is Chop Robinson's wingman. He's a good player. I'd still wonder if there's not better prospects.
I think Xavier Legette might low-key play his way to being a first-round pick.
I think he's already. I mean, unless he runs slow, that's the only thing. But if he runs over under for him is about 4.52, 4.52 or faster to me means he's in the first. Anything slower than 4.52 means he's maybe pushed towards that bubble. Jalen Simpson's an okay player. He made the switch from corner to safety. He's going to test really well. He's going to run probably in the mid to maybe the low 4.4s. But I don't love him as a safety prospect. I think he's a terrific athlete. There's, once again, guys I would have invited over them, like maybe Kenny Gallup from Howard. Cedric Von Prawn is one of my favorite center prospects. I'm glad he's there. And, obviously we'll talk more about him next week. Joe Milton, I mean, I get it. I guess you're required to have an SEC quarter. Well, you have two now because they have Rattler also.
Spencer, yeah.
But, I mean, are there not better? I don't know.
Yeah, let's be real. When it's come to the quarterbacks in the Senior Bowl for the past several years, there's been a clear agenda. I think we can both agree on that. Before we wrap up, yeah, I'm very interested. I'm interested, especially the one-on-ones of some of these offensive linemen, because I had some major questions about two guys we mentioned, Lamea and Faltanu. Not trying to jump on the Polynesian train, but also Oregon State's tackle Talise Fuaga. I'm having a really hard time with my evaluation of him. So I would love to see some one-on-one reps, especially against
Yep.
this defensive line group, to get a little bit of a clear picture.
Yep.
I think Arizona's Jordan Morgan is going to make some money in the Senior Bowl. I think he's going to have a standout performance. I think Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall for the wide receiver groups are going to have some standout performances. And
Yep.
the last guy that I think is going to make himself a lot of money in this one is well, I just had him. Of course, I scroll as soon as I have him on the screen. I scroll.
But Isaiah Davis, Mr. Nagy, Isaiah Davis, let's make that happen. But sorry.
Yeah, yeah. No, hey, I'm with you 110% on him. Who was the last player? It would help if I actually looked at the position list while I scroll. That might make a difference. Uh, fellow Texan Byron Murphy the second. I think that he is going to make himself a fair amount of dough that when it comes to Senior Bowl. But of course, we're talking this more in detail next week, so save that all for you guys. Moving on to the last two things. Well, this and then closing. College Player of the Year. Should we do the one or should we do? I think we should do 2 to 4 of our personal opinions.
Yep.
Most undervalued
There we go.
players in college football this year.
I can definitely do that.
Go
There's some guys that I just think. Well, I'll start with a Pac-12 guy that was a guy that moved up from a lower level, and that's Cameron Skatebo, and then became their offense. Right? I mean, he's just such an interesting player. He returns punts. He returns kickoffs, or can return kickoffs. I don't think he returned kickoffs at the Arizona State level, but he did when he was at Sacramento State. He's punted. He's passed. He's what else has he done? He has a pass. He's rushed for touchdowns. He's passed for touchdowns. He's caught touchdowns. I think he had a punt return touchdown. He's a good blocker. People have tried to compare him to Taysom Hill, which is not terrible, but I mean, he's more like Paul Hornung than he is like Taysom Hill. Shorter, he's a shorter, more compact guy, but I mean, the guy does some of everything. I mean, it's just crazy how many different things I've seen this guy do. And once again, a guy that I want. I mean, he's averaged 44 yards per punt. He's had a 53-yard punt this year. He's had a 25-yard pass that, hit Eliza Badger in the hands. It wasn't like it just got there. He drilled it in there. He showed a little arm strength. He was their best running back. Look at what he did to USC, right? 2 for 3 for 42 yards passing, 111 yards rushing, 79 receiving yards, 232 yards of total offense against USC. Oh man, I just can't get over that guy. And I was a big fan of his before he transferred, right? Big fan of his before he even transferred. And when he got to Arizona State, I tried to tell everybody who was listening that he was about to do big things there. And even I didn't think he'd do as many things as he did, but he's one of my favorite he's one of the like team captains on my all underappreciated team. And then I know I've bothered everybody in the world about a couple of guys. Nate Lynn at William and Mary. Watch for this guy. He's going to play at the next level. But Anton Yukaj and his teammates. I mean, Anton Yukaj is a beast. And when I think about the fact, like I said, that he was sort of the wingman to Jared Verse when they were together, and now he's making a huge impact, in FCS football. And now, he's become sort of the man at Albany. And now his partner in crime, that kid Kelly, I mean, those are both NFL prospects, legitimate NFL prospects. I think Yunkaj is one of those guys who sort of a move around type. He's not quite bendy enough and purely athletic enough to be a real mismatched pass rusher at the next level. But I mean, Dylan Kelly is absolutely terrific. They just have really good football players on their on their defense. That's one of the best defenses. Period. Once again, I mean, I'm not going to say just FCS. They have their defensive line. That front seven was one of the best I saw, up there with, like, as a group, front seven's up there with Iowa. And they may have, in terms of just pure pass rush, they may be slightly better than Iowa in terms of guys that I sort of like for what they might be, moving on to the next level as pass rushers. That's a really good group of pass rushers that they can put out there. And so if you haven't, well, obviously you can't watch Albany anymore, but go if you recorded Albany, or you can track it down on YouTube. I mean, their season ended during the playoffs, but they had a really nice little playoff run, and they're not done. Like, they're going to continue being a good program, going forward for the time being. But that group, that bunch of guys that can roll out there, Ori Jean Charles is a good player. They've got a really good group. I mean, I don't want to name all of them. Probably shouldn't, but but across the board, I mean, Dylan Kelly is a pro prospect. As I said before, Anton Yunkaj, 21 and a half tackles for loss, right? 15 sacks. AJ Simon, right? His wingman, or whatever you want to call it, 21 and a half tackles for loss, right? I mean, it's just crazy. 12 and a half sacks. And Simon is the better pure athlete of the two. Yunkaj is the guy who's got the better technician, maybe a little more powerful, a little more efficient. But AJ Simon, is a guy that has legitimate chance to be a Darryl Tapp type. If you remember Darryl Tapp out of Virginia Tech, those are guys that and once again, I'll mention Kenny Gallup. Kenny Gallup is one of the best HBCU prospects. He has a chance to be drafted. There's no guarantees, unfortunately, especially with HBCU kids. There's no guarantee any of them will ever be drafted. But I really do like Kenny Gallup. If he tests well, I think he has a decent shot to be drafted. Those are guys that sort of leapt to mind for me. What are some of your guys, Brock?
So, in honor of the Pac-12 dying, my whole pick is going to be Pac-12 guys. So, first off, I think that this dude was not only the most underrated quarterback in the country, he was literally the most underrated quarterback on his team. That's Cal quarterback Fernando Mendoza. Dude had like
Yeah.
2 scholarship offers. Came into an offense that really wasn't suited for him. Threw for 1,700 yards, 14 touchdowns. Doesn't really have that big of a receiver threat outside. I think Jacquez Hunter is his name. And he came in as a true freshman in the middle of the season, third on the depth chart. Got thrown in, had a pretty good year, got Cal bowl eligible, and he's my quarterback selection. For a running back, even though I'm a huge fan of Jaden Ott, I think Dylan Johnson doesn't get the flowers he deserves.
Oh,
1,000-yard rusher this year. Um, In their win against Oregon the first time in Washington, he had 100 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry. He had a touchdown. He had, of course, his 256-yard game against USC when Michael Penix Jr. wasn't playing up to standard. If
Whew.
he doesn't have that game,
Whew.
Washington doesn't win. And we
Yep.
all know it with 4 touchdowns. And then he follows that up the following week against Utah in that very close, tight game. 104 rushing yards, a touchdown. He had 89 yards against Oregon State and a grinder. 82 yards against Washington State, and then 152 yards and 2 touchdowns against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. If Washington is serious about beating Texas, they need Dylan Johnson to have the game of his life because he
Yep.
opens up everything. He opens up passing lanes. He opens up the three-headed
Yep.
monster receiver. His defense can take a breather with him, making it happen. So he's my second pick. My third pick is a guy that I've been mentioning for quite a long time, but I don't think he's gotten the flowers he deserves, even though he's in a conference of great wide receivers. We always want to focus on the guys at Washington, Oregon, stuff like that. Tetrarod McMillan, Arizona, 1,200 receiving
Yep.
yards, 80 receptions, 10 touchdowns.
Remember all the hand
Right.
wringing about, oh no, they lost Dorian Singer. Whatever shall they do?
Oh, just be better. Yeah, I'm sure Dorian Singer wishes that he didn't leave because Arizona's offense was popping. The whole team was popping, and McMillan will be a first-round pick when he eventually declares for the draft in a couple of years, if not next year. And the last one is on the defense side of the ball, Gabriel Murphy. Everyone has been high on Latu for a very good reason, but Gabriel Murphy has been a very effective pass rusher. 22 solo tackles, 8 sacks in the year. A lot of times UCLA would just send 4, sometimes even 3. He'd still get there. So those are my 4 underrated players this year in college football. Of course, an ode to the dying Pac-12. Well, time to wrap it up. Any final words before we head out, Bill?
Well, my final words is please, if you haven't watched an FCS championship game before, watch this one. Especially if you're a draft guy. There's a lot of NFL talent that'll be on that field. There's a couple of guys I think in that second between the two teams. I think there's 1 or 2 secondary prospects. There's 2 or 3 linebacker prospects between the two teams. Isaiah Davis is a guy. If I'm the Steelers and I'm looking to move on from Najee Harris, which I would be trying to do, there's a guy that might be a good replacement. But yeah, and then the quarterbacks are sort of fringe guys, but offensive line, there's 2 or 3 guys on the South Dakota State side, and probably 1 or 2 guys offensive line wise on the Bobcat side that I think are legit prospects. So yeah, definitely watch that, and yes, definitely watch the next college football forecast, which will be the last one of this year, 2023, and we'll be joined once again by your friend and mine, our friend, everyone's friend, Matt Hayes of Draft Nerds.
Yes, absolutely. And the last thing I would like to say before we leave is that, of course, we're in bowl season, and that's a great time for us to give out flowers to everybody. But a coach that I think hasn't gotten the love that he deserved for the job that he did this year with all that he had to do, going to a new conference. His longtime starting quarterback had massive injury issues. Is Jeff Traylor of UTSA. They've wrapped up their
Shout
season
out
winning
to
the Frisco
them,
Bowl.
yes.
35-17 against Charles Huff and Marshall, the coach and program that we have an affinity for. Traylor has done a phenomenal job. I had him slated to take over for Texas A&M, and that didn't happen. Then I had him slated for Houston, and that didn't happen. Maybe he doesn't want to leave, and I don't blame him. But if he does, and you're looking for a great coach, Traylor is the guy. What he's done this year is fun.
Yep.
Terrific coach. And watch out for UTSA next year as he continues to build on the success he's had for the past several years. And also, don't hop into the portal like Zachary Franklin and go to Ole Miss and then catch like 3 balls, right? I'm telling you right now, if Franklin stayed at UTSA, we would be talking about him very highly at this moment. So, but hey, it is what
somewhere he and Dorian Singer are buying each other drinks.
Yeah, they're in the bitter transfer club. But that is the world of college football we live in. Thank you guys so much for joining us. For my co-host Bill Carroll, who's now I see why it's difficult. Oh, this way. Wait, nope.
Yeah, right, exactly. You got to do it that way. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that was much more difficult than I had anticipated.
Yeah, all right.
I understand why it takes a second.
You got to flip it in your head. Yeah.
Bill Carroll. I'm Brock Vieira. This has been Team NBS Media. Be sure to like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, We'll be back next week. Talk more Senior Bowl and draft. See you guys next time.
See you in 1 week.